Who's she?
I don't believe I know you.
Where's Josh? Where's Mom and Dad?
Have you guys ever wondered why some shows felt like other shows? Like Big Time Rush and Hannah Montana talked about a lot of TeenNick and Disney Channel on this channel. And upon further digging and research and comparing and contrasting, I realized that the end of teen TV is near. What's up, everybody? It's Johnny2000, and I'm gonna do something I really like to do. I'm not sure if you guys saw my proof videos of the most rated shows and the least rated shows of Disney and Nickelodeon teen shows, but I want to take everything a little further. I like this experimenting of how a perfect teen show is made and how so many shows have done it right and some have just done it wrong. But let's take a step back even further, and instead of talking about teen shows, let's talk about the networks themselves. How many times did they repeat ideas? How many times did they do something unique? And how many times did they just copy and paste? Now, viewer discretion advised. Usually when I leave out shows I don't know super well, I get a lot of hate comments. But here's the thing, guys, I can only realistically say I'm an expert on so many things, and I can't say I'm an expert on these entire networks, because I delved really deep into these individual shows that I feel like made up the identity of the 2000s. And those shows are That's So Raven, Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Hannah Montana, Sweet Life on Deck, Wizards of Waverly Place, Jonas, Sonny with a Chance, and Good Luck Charlie. These are Disney Channel's original shows, and those are what we're going to be looking at today. Now for Nickelodeon, we have Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, Unfabulous, Drake and Josh, Zoey 101, iCarly, The Naked Brothers Band, True Jackson VP, Big Time Rush, and Victorious. So these are the shows that I think heavily represent everything that these networks were trying to do. Teen TV used to be diverse, experimental, character-driven, but over time, now it seems like all these shows were about fame, family, relationships. Really, it came down to only 3 unique things for each show. At first, something is new, it's exciting, it's different, it feels like nothing will ever be like it again, but then over time, as people become more aware, slowly migrates from new to modern. And then modern is like present day, like what it actually is. Then we further from modern to old, and old is when it's been enough time since history. And what's the funny thing about history? You don't really notice a lot of patterns until it becomes history. That's how I was able to determine that despite the fact we've had dozens of original, we only really had 3 shows on each channel. Now bear with me here, we're gonna dive deep into what I mean by only 3 shows. I know you're thinking like, Johnny, that's just plain incorrect. But really when we're talking about the uniqueness of these shows, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of unique ideas and premises and character takes on all of these ideas, but when you boil it down to its core concept, a lot of these shows are pretty similar. So Disney Channel and Nickelodeon actually had their own unique approach to these things. For example, Disney Channel had 3 types of shows. There's the Double Life show, where there's a character living both an alter ego and balancing it with their current identity. There's the Abnormal Family show, where it's an ensemble of family members in a unique situation. Then the Work Life show, where the show is kind of more like a workplace comedy, where the show is pretty simply broken up into the main character's life personally and then externally. And while Disney Channel maintained those, Nickelodeon took a completely different approach. Nickelodeon actually had something called the School Life show, where it was half school, half life, as opposed to Disney Channel that was more so half work, half life. There's the Fame show, where it's a person dealing with fame and their personal life, which is similar to the Disney Channel's Identity show, but a lot more about the reflecting culture. Then we have the Ensemble show, the shows that are really focused on a multitude of characters, never really following one specific lead, but more so, you know, the entire environment and what's going on. So what made these 2 types of shows so different? Even though both networks followed the same 3 formula, they all had a different approach to teen television. For example, Disney Channel built its brand on idealized teen experiences like clean, bright, and dreamlike, more scripted, theatrical, and exaggerated, and relying on slapstick catchphrases and musical stings. Their character arcs were a little more formulaic, with the status quo always reset by the end of the episode, and the larger-than-life personalities of Raven, Alex Russo, Miley Stewart, like, they are all consistent. Meanwhile, Nickelodeon aimed for more grittier, chaotic teen experiences, which could be very fun in a lot of ways, but definitely gives it an inherent difference in its core that you can almost feel when you're watching it. Like a Ned's Declassified and Unfabulous watch is so much more different than a That's So Raven and a Good Luck Charlie one, and you sometimes can't quite place your finger on it. Disney shows are usually more moral-driven, with every episode having a lesson. Even if it's subtle, it's still there with a moral at the end of it. And Nickelodeon's become more experimental, that end with lessons, but more sitcom-y on a joke. It's cool because Nickelodeon shows feel more grounded, more raw and honest that way, but also it's chaoticness that you're sensing. Just because Disney Channel is a lot more formulaic, planned, and prepped, doesn't mean it's not as good. If anything, that's what makes the Pixar movies good, the Disney Channel movies good. The idea that it's a really smart and compelling narrative that takes a teen's life very seriously. And whether that's not fun to take seriously, and you'd rather just joke like Nickelodeon, that's okay too. Disney Channel wasn't made to be so off the rails and honest about a teen's life. It's more about getting these lessons in. So the double life shows. No matter how many teen shows existed, they relied on these three unique concepts: double life, abnormal family, and a work social balance. They weren't just ideas, they were foundational structures that the networks refused to evolve beyond. At first glance, Hannah Montana, Wizards, and That's So Raven feel wildly different. Like one's a pop star, one's a wizard, and another's a psychic. But at their core, they all share the same DNA. The protagonist has a hidden identity that creates constant chaos. They live a normal life but struggle to balance their secret abilities or status, and the show's conflict always stems from hiding the secret or misusing it. Why it worked? I mean, for Disney, it gave the audience wish fulfillment. What if you had magic? What if you were famous? What if you had to juggle your own self with your true identity? Which is, at its core, a lot closer to real life than you think. It's like managing a social and emotional life at the same time. And that's why these shows are so good at identifying to its audience. While Wizards, Hannah, and That's So Raven are all similarly about the dual identity, they have one thing that makes them different from each other. Wizards of Waverly Place falls into the category of family. It's a double life show about family. Alex struggles being a normal teen while also being a wizard in training, and this tight-knit family that has to keep this secret. Hannah Montana isn't about family as much as it is about fame. Miley has to balance school with being a famous pop star, and the conflict comes a lot more between Miley and the world as opposed to the Russos, who have it between Alex and the family. While That's So Raven doesn't prioritize fame or family even, I would argue Raven is a lead character show. It's a character show focused on Raven, her psychic visions that force her to secretly navigate situations. I would argue it's not necessarily family because, unlike Wizards, it's focused on Raven's specific life experience, while the Russos kind of take up Wizards. Raven doesn't get fame from this, therefore fame is not a component of this show the same way Hannah Montana is, making it unique. Imagine 20 shows weren't made on either of these channels. Imagine just three shows over the course of their entire existence were famous shows, and only three. If you could only keep one show in each of these categories to represent its overall show, what would that show be? Now, for the double life show, if only one had to survive, no surprise, I'm going with Hannah Montana. It was the most extreme version of all these concepts. The double life in Miley's world is just so realistic, it's relatable, it's just slightly above Wizards in the fact that you feel like you could have this dream, and it's not super far-fetched like the Russos or the Baxters. If you had to keep Wizards or That's So Raven is the question, what do you guys think? Would you keep Wizards or That's So Raven if we had to get a fantasy one in here? Then Disney has the Abnormal Family, which is every show being the same show. Family sitcoms were not unique to teen TV. I feel like a little bit of every show has something family related at its core, whether it's the main conflict or just a setting. It seems like the characters come usually from a family or a workplace setting. Shows like Life with Derek, Good Luck Charlie, and Jonas were really good at adding one small twist. Like Life with Derek is a blended family with rivalry-driven humor. Good Luck Charlie is about a baby as the central cast. And Jonas is a famous family pretending to fit in. The show is not actually about the family, but the kids' surrounding lives and friendships. And there's no real stakes. The abnormality never really disrupts anything. Now, there is one key difference between each of these Disney shows. So for the Abnormal Family show, we have the classic sitcom with a twist. It's always 4 or 5 characters that have to do with the family, and that's what's the glue of the show, but there's always something about it that's unconventional, maybe like not normal, I would say. For example, the lead show is Life with Derek. The abnormality is a blended family where the step-siblings hate each other. Kinda like the Brady Bunch gone dark. And Canadian? Then we have Good Luck Charlie, which is their family show. A traditional sitcom blending this new baby fitting into Teddy's life. And while Teddy is somewhat the lead, it could be done without her. It's more based around the characters of the baby as opposed to Life with Derek, which needs Casey to be the main character. If Life with Derek didn't have a main character, it wouldn't be a consistent show. But if Good Luck Charlie didn't have a main character, we'd still follow the Duncans really well. And then Jonas, which is the Fame one. You know, I didn't put it in the Double Life one because it's a kind of an outward secret that the Jonas Brothers are famous in their show. It doesn't have, a lot of the episodes don't really have to do with them keeping a secret. It more has to do with them balancing their life despite the fact that they're famous. Fame comes in between the family in a way that Hannah Montana doesn't necessarily. All 3 of them focus on character dynamics, but each take the different approach, like the step-siblings, the traditional family, and the celebrity household. If only one of these shows had to survive, I'm definitely going to say Good Luck Charlie. Not only did it show success through its ratings and its long run, longer run than any of these shows, but it's relatable, well-written, and it's rewatchable. Probably the most rewatchable out of all of them. Jonas ended up being more like a celebrity cash grab, I would say, of a show, not necessarily trying to be unique, while Life with Derek was almost too grounded to a point where it felt like it was copying the Brady Bunch. Then we have the Work Life show, of course. For this, I have The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, which is focused on family itself, half about Zach, Cody, and Carrie living in the hotel, and more so about the work life that Carrie goes through as an employee, and every other main character in the show has something to do with this hotel and takes a responsible part in it. It's the glue that keeps them together, and while Sweet Life of Zach and Cody is kind of a family show, it more leans into the work-life relationships. There's no such thing as an office comedy in its purest form in teen television because that's just not what teens go through. But in this show, the plot does derive from an occupation and job issues you would have, whether it's directly affecting the main characters or not. The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody prioritized family and then kind of had the hotel workplace as a backdrop for Cody and Zach's antics. The difference between that and The Sweet Life on Deck, The Sweet Life on Deck is an ensemble show, more so like a work comedy, where every character has something to do with the boat, and instead of having their family, Zach and Cody are surrounded by their peers, making it a lot more like Ned's Declassified, but it's less about being in the class and more about being in the work environment. Sonny with a Chance is about a small town girl trying to fit in a TV star environment. It's not necessarily about the family, and it's not necessarily about the full ensemble. It's more so about the fame, and Sonny, if anything. Not only do we not see Sonny with her family, we don't usually see Sonny in her personal life. It's usually half about Sonny as the character, and then the other half about the workplace of So Random. And even though it's like fame-based, I would say it's more about work-life relationships than it is about keeping a secret or being affected directly by the fame. While they do have episodes addressing the fame, I think it's more so that workplace comedy, like 30 Rock would be versus Kimmy Schmidt, who is famous, but it's more so a lead show for that. Something that I noticed Disney doesn't do a lot is taking the school life as somebody's full-time job. And that's something that makes Ned's Declassified unique against any Disney Channel show because it's the only show that takes takes place completely at a school, that commits to the idea that these kids are living their lives at school and the day ends with the bell. If only one of these shows had to survive, obviously it would be The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. I mean, The Sweet Life on Deck definitely didn't seem like it was supposed to be this new, unique thing at all, and I feel like if we had to cover juggling between family and work, it does a little bit better than Sonny with a Chance, since there's no emotional connection with the families and the people. And Sonny with a Chance just overall was not as successful, so I can't really vouch for that. Now for the Nickelodeon 3 formulas. First, we have the School Life show. It's a classic school setting with a unique twist. There's 3 shows that take this identity of the Nickelodeon school show, and it's Ned's Declassified, of course, because it takes place completely in school, and all about Ned navigating all of his tips and advice that he needs to survive middle school. And since it's not really about family, because there's nobody there that he's related to, they're all kept together by these social events. Meanwhile, Unfabulous also is focused primarily on the school life, the drama that goes on between her and the characters because of school. School is essentially her priority in this show too. But she's the only one of these shows that doesn't live at the school throughout like the 20 minutes of the episodes. Then we have Zoey 101, which is obviously the lead character show. Isn't necessarily her family, it's her friends, and we're at school most of the time, but for the most part, it's following her specific journey in the school. Ned's Declassified is able to split it up between 3 main characters, but Zoey 101 is purely about Zoey. The School Life show is definitely unique, with 3 of these shows being very different, but this definitely feels like they come together in the same way. Only separated by its ensemble, its lead, and its family structure. They're fast-paced, and if only one had to survive, I definitely feel like it should have been Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. Not only do I love this show for its tips and its uplifting, non-cynical approach to being a teenager, but I also feel like Zoey 101 is just barely a fantasy, making the audience wish that they were in a dormitory. Ned's Declassified made school on its own work, while Zoey 101 leaned more towards character-driven stuff. So if any of these were to survive and represent the channel as the School Life show, I definitely think Ned's Declassified went really hard on committing to not only just being about half school, half characters, like they went all in on school and they went all in on the characters in a way that Unfabulous and Zoey 101 just almost got. But I feel like family and lead-driven stuff can deter the perfect story of a school life balance. But fame wasn't really a huge thing in the Nickelodeon world, except for these shows. The ones about success, popularity, and media culture. There's Big Time Rush, which is the ensemble show. The boys navigating fame as a group, not necessarily related, they're just buddies against the good and bad side of record labels, producing their own music, and growing up. iCarly was definitely the lead-based show, where even though it became a little more ensemble toward the end, it was focused on this one specific girl and her character goals to create a really good web show. And then everything was kind of like an offset of her and how she's trying to accomplish this. Big Time Rush was following Kendall Schmidt a little bit, but it definitely managed to give all of the boys equal attention, not making it fair to call it a lead-driven show. And then the Naked Brothers Band was the only family one that I would say balances family and fame. iCarly was almost a family show following Carly and her brother, but it leaned so much toward Carly, I feel like it's fair to say it was the lead-driven show. The family show was definitely Naked Brothers Band. It's like Big Time Rush if the characters were closer, and it's like iCarly, it was more about a family instead of a single person. So each of these did a really unique thing, but if we had to catch one of them and only have Nickelodeon have produced one of them, I definitely think Big Time Rush and iCarly would be really hard to choose between. Like, if Naked Brothers Band wasn't so close to Big Time Rush, I would definitely separate them, but I feel like they're a little too similar in the sense that they are like big fame-driven shows about boy bands, and we only really can have one band show. But if we had to choose between a band show and a webcast show, I definitely think iCarly should have made that list. It's not uncommon to have a show about a singer, a songwriter, like, they do that on Disney. I really like iCarly in the sense that, like, it's not normal to want to be an influencer, but when you do, there's a lot of chaos and fun that goes into it, and I feel like overall it was just a unique show. And it took the Fame show concept that Nickelodeon did so well and almost brought it further to be more unique than Disney. Then we have, of course, the ensemble show. I had a little bit of trouble finding what I would consider the workplace show or the lead show. I came down to a little bit of both. I would say the ensemble show is a show that is completely about multiple characters, and it was brought down to two. There's work and family. There's True Jackson VP, which is the teen running a fashion company, which on its own is super unique, but definitely leans toward being a workplace comedy show. And I would argue that the other workplace comedy shows were school shows, because, you know, they're kids, they're teens, and unlike Disney Channel, they didn't find unique ways to integrate kids into the adults' lives as easily, but True Jackson VP did a great job at being that only Nickelodeon show that really did do that well. True Jackson VP is about a teenager running a fashion company. It's exciting. It's like almost that dual thing that Disney Channel did, but in a grounded workplace world. Like Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and Hannah Montana coming together. True Jackson VP was just revolutionary, and it was almost hard to put it into a category with these other shows. And that's exactly what I had an issue with also with Drake and Josh. Easily a family show. And it's definitely fair to put it in as an ensemble show because while it started out about being two brothers, it really thrived when it was about this community of people. When it had the premiere, when it had, you know, Josh's boss, Drake's teacher, like it needed all of these people to become the show it is today and eventually be successful. And I couldn't choose which one to survive. If anything, it feels like Nickelodeon did a great job at creating more diverse and unique plot lines for shows, like teen shows, grounded but couldn't necessarily go as far as Fame. While Disney Channel kept that dreamy-like aesthetic and grounded morals, the perfect porcelain example of what television should be. It was almost a little pandering to create a show for kids that works for teens as opposed to Nickelodeon making a really good sitcom and then fitting it to teens. It's a completely different approach, but it made both of these channels have their own unique shows. But when it really comes down to it, I don't know if you guys agree with me. After hearing about all of this, what do you guys think? Do you feel like it's clear that there are only 3 real Disney Channel shows with 3 real unique approaches to them? Would Disney Channel have been good if it only had Hannah Montana, Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and Good Luck Charlie? I don't think it would have been good, but I do think it would have been the perfect representation of everything they did. I definitely think we'd be missing out on a lot of really unique things, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't be getting everything that we got out of these 20 produced shows in 3. Nickelodeon, if we only had Ned's Declassified, iCarly, Drake and Josh, and True Jackson, would you feel like we accomplished everything as Nickelodeon? It's weird, but I kinda do, and that's how you know that these fits worked the way they did. I mean, Nickelodeon and Disney Channel are networks, and they have obligations to get popular shows out on the air. And obviously, if something works, if a theme is going well, if a genre of show is doing phenomenal, why would you risk doing a completely new one when there's such a good premise right there? And it did show over time that we didn't notice, you know, like until 10 years later, did we realize the similarities between That's So Raven, Hannah Montana, and Wizards of Waverly Place? No. But it's awesome that we got all these different subsections of them. But it is weird to think about. If you look back, they only really took 3 unique approaches. 3 additional attempts at a theme without going too much further than that. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Johnny 2000, covering all the 2000s content from TV, movies, media, and so much more. And I will see you guys next time.